Ask an AI to write you a poem, and the answer arrives in seconds, smooth and effortless, as if it came from nowhere. It did not come from nowhere. Before that model could answer anything, millions of human beings spent billions of hours teaching it. They drew boxes around pedestrians so cars could see. They ranked answers so chatbots could sound helpful. They read the most disturbing text on the internet so the model would know what never to say to you. Most of them are invisible. Many are in the global south, and some of them were paid less than $2 an hour to build the foundations of an industry now worth trillions. Today on The Big Picture, the invisible workforce inside every AI model you use and the strange, fast-changing economics of who gets paid for it. Strip away the jargon and the work comes down to 3 jobs. First, labeling, showing the model what things are. A human looks at an image and marks the tumor, the stop sign, the cracked weld, over and over, millions of times, until statistical patterns emerge. Second, ranking, the technique called reinforcement learning from human feedback. The model writes 4 answers, a human picks the best one, and that preference gets baked into the model's behavior. This step, more than any breakthrough in math, is what turned raw text predictors into assistants people actually wanted to use. Third, the red lines. Humans reading genuinely horrific content, violence, abuse, the worst of the internet, and flagging it so the model learns refusal. Every polished AI answer you have ever received is downstream of those 3 kinds of human judgment. Here is how the money flowed at the bottom of the supply chain. In 2021, OpenAI signed contracts with a San Francisco firm called Sama to make its models less toxic. The rate on paper was about $12.50 per hour of work. That work was performed in Nairobi, Kenya, where Sama's employees, the people actually reading descriptions of violence and abuse for hours a day, took home between $1.32 and $2 per hour, depending on seniority and performance. The most junior workers earned a base salary of about $170 a month. A Time investigation put this arrangement on the record in early 2023, along with the testimony of workers who described lasting psychological damage from what they read. The gap between $12.50 and $1.32 is not a rounding error. It is the business model. Sama was not unusual. The dominant model of the 2010s and early 2020s was the Piecework platform, and the biggest belonged to Scale AI, a San Francisco company whose worker-facing arm was called Remote Tasks. The pitch to Silicon Valley was beautiful, an API for human intelligence. Upload your data, get back labels, never think about the humans. The pitch to workers in Kenya, the Philippines, and Venezuela was Piecework. Pennies to a few dollars per task, no benefits, managed entirely by algorithm. Workers reported accounts suspended right before payday for vague policy violations, wages simply vanishing. In March 2024, after press scrutiny, Remote Tasks abruptly shut down in Kenya entirely, locking workers out of accounts overnight. The arbitrage was the product. Buy judgment where labor is cheap, sell it where capital is expensive. By 2024, Scale AI had reached roughly $1.5 billion in annualized revenue, selling that human judgment to nearly every major AI lab. Then came the deal that broke the market open. In June 2025, Meta paid about $14.3 billion for 49% of Scale, mostly to acquire its 28-year-old founder, Alexander Wang, and his team for Meta's superintelligence push. Think about what that price says. The labor was worth $1 or $2 an hour. The company that organized the labor was worth $29 billion, but the deal carried a poison pill. Scale's biggest customers were Meta's biggest rivals. Google, OpenAI, and others began pulling work almost immediately, unwilling to send their most sensitive training data through a company half-owned by the competition. The middleman had become the conflict. And here is where the story turns, because just as Scale wobbled, the entire economics of the work flipped. The models got good. A frontier model in 2026 does not need 1 million people telling it what a cat looks like. It needs a cardiologist explaining why a diagnosis is wrong, a securities lawyer walking through a filing, a senior engineer reviewing code. The bottleneck moved from quantity of labels to quality of judgment, and the cheap end of the market began to evaporate. The same technology that was built on $2 an hour labeling started automating $2 an hour labeling. What it could not automate yet was expertise, so the money went hunting for experts. The company that saw it coming was one almost nobody had heard of. Surge AI, founded in 2020, took no venture capital, employed only about 110 people, and quietly focused on high-quality, high-paid annotation for frontier labs. By 2024, it was generating roughly $1.2 billion in revenue, more than scale, while coordinating a network of about 1 million contributors. When Surge finally raised outside money in 2025, investors discussed valuations of $25 billion or more, 110 employees, $1 billion plus in revenue. That ratio, roughly $10 million of revenue per employee, exists because the actual workforce, the million annotators, sits outside the company entirely. The payroll is the product, and it is not on the payroll. The purest expression of the new market is Mercor, founded by 3 21-year-olds, which runs a marketplace matching AI labs with doctors, lawyers, PhDs, and bankers who train models at $100 an hour and up. By June 2026, Mercor's annualized gross revenue hit $2 billion, up from $760 million just 4 months earlier, one of the fastest revenue ramps in the history of software. By mid-2026, it was reportedly raising at a $20 billion valuation. Read those numbers again and notice what happened to the wage ladder. In 5 years, the marginal AI trainer went from a $2 an hour content moderator in Nairobi to a $150 an hour American radiologist. The work climbed the skill curve and the pay climbed with it. The invisibility, though, stayed exactly the same. So who captures the value? Follow the concentration. Of the 50-plus companies selling training data and human feedback, 4 of them, Scale, Surge, Mercor, and Handshake, now take in more than 75% of the revenue. The AI labs pay billions per year for human judgment, the platforms keep the spread and the equity value, and the workers, whether in Nairobi or Nashville, are contractors on task rates with no equity, no benefits, and no claim on the upside. It is a familiar shape. The gold rush pays the shovel sellers first, and in the AI training economy, the shovel sellers are worth a combined $70+ billion, while the hands holding the shovels invoice by the task. The people whose judgment is literally inside the model earn none of the model. None of this is new, which is what makes it worth seeing clearly. Economists call it ghost work, labor deliberately hidden so a product can appear automated. The textile mills of the 1800s ran on piecework rates and called it progress. Gig platforms rebuilt the model with apps. AI added one final twist. The workers are training the system that may eventually perform their task. A radiologist paid to correct a model's readings is, task by task, teaching it radiology. The platforms know this, the labs know this, and the workers know it too, which is why the smartest ones treat it as a toll they collect on the way through, not a career. The machine economy does not eliminate labor. It hides labor, reprices it, and moves it up the skill curve, one automation at a time. Here is the takeaway. AI is not a machine that replaced human judgment. It is a machine for collecting, compressing, and reselling human judgment at scale. And the market for that judgment is now one of the fastest-growing labor markets on Earth, even though it appears in no jobs report as a category of its own. The next time an AI gives you a flawless answer, remember the supply chain behind it. The labeler who drew the boxes, the moderator who read what you never had to, the PhD who graded the reasoning. Whether their share of the value grows or shrinks is one of the defining economic questions of the next decade. If you want to know who gets rich from AI, we broke down the full stack in an earlier episode, and the answer starts with whoever owns the toll booth. Subscribe, and next time on The Machine Economy, we follow another piece of the machine most people never see.